Some animal attacks are so terrifying, they feel ripped straight from a horror movie. From massive beasts to tiny lethal creatures, nature has taken lives in chilling and unexpected ways. Buckle up for a spine-tingling journey through 5 of the most shocking and unforgettable animal-related deaths ever recorded. Steve Irwin, the beloved Australian naturalist and global wildlife icon, lived a life defined by adventure, enthusiasm, and a deep devotion to the animal kingdom. With his unmistakable khaki outfit, boundless energy, and fearless interactions with some of the world's most dangerous creatures, Irwin wasn't just a television personality. He was a symbol of conservation and curiosity. Yet, in a tragic twist of fate, this larger-than-life figure was taken too soon by one of the least aggressive animals in the wild, a stingray. It happened on a seemingly ordinary morning in early September 2006. Off the serene coast of Port Douglas in northeast Australia, Irwin was filming an underwater documentary intended to showcase the lesser-known creatures of the ocean. Diving near a coral reef in shallow waters, he was following a stingray as part of the shoot. Suddenly, the normally docile animal lashed upward, striking him in the chest with its tail barb. The venomous spike pierced directly through his chest, likely hitting his heart. It was a freak accident, an incredibly rare encounter with deadly consequences. Irwin's team aboard his research vessel, Croc 1, sprang into action immediately. They made an emergency call to the nearest city, Cairns, and began efforts to resuscitate him as they rushed toward Low Isle, where a rescue helicopter was expected to land. But the injury was too severe. Irwin was unresponsive, and by the time paramedics reached him, he was already gone. He was just 44 years old. News of his death stunned the world. In Australia, the public and government alike were united in shock and sorrow. Politicians on both sides issued formal condolences within hours. For many Australians, Steve Irwin was more than just a television star. He was a national hero, a passionate educator, and a man who brought the country's unique wildlife to the world stage. Irwin's rise to international fame was as wild and unscripted as the animals he loved. Born on February 22, 1962, in Melbourne, Victoria, he grew up in Queensland, where his parents ran a small reptile park. From a young age, he was handling snakes, trapping crocodiles, and helping with the family business. His childhood was spent not in front of screens or school books, but in the bush, learning firsthand the behaviors of some of the world's most dangerous animals. In 1991, Irwin took over the park and renamed it Australia Zoo. That same year, he met Terry Raines, a wildlife rehabilitator from the United States. Their connection was instant. They married soon after, and their honeymoon consisted of traveling the Australian outback, capturing and relocating crocodiles. Footage from this trip would become the first episode of The Crocodile Hunter, the show that would launch them into global stardom. Over the next decade, Irwin produced nearly 50 wildlife documentaries that aired on Animal Planet and other networks, captivating a global audience of over 200 million. His style was electric. He didn't just talk about animals, he wrestled them, swam alongside them, and introduced them to viewers with genuine awe and childlike wonder. He was known for his signature catchphrase, "Crikey," a word often exclaimed during heart-stopping encounters with crocodiles, snakes, and other beasts. But beyond the showmanship was a man deeply committed to wildlife conservation. Through the Australia Zoo and the Wildlife Warriors Foundation he founded with Terry, Irwin advocated for habitat protection, species rescue, and environmental education. He was particularly passionate about crocodiles, animals he admired not just for their power, but for their role in balancing fragile ecosystems. Ironically, for someone who routinely handled venomous snakes, prowled crocodile-infested waters, and faced off with some of the most lethal creatures on Earth, Irwin had managed to avoid serious injury throughout his career. He often joked that his most painful bites came not from the predators he studied, but from birds like parrots and cockatoos. He claimed that for some reason, parrots seemed to have it out for him, nipping at his fingers and even trying to bite his nose. It was just one of the many quirks that made him so relatable to fans around the world. Steve Irwin died doing what he loved, exploring the mysteries of the natural world, camera rolling, surrounded by creatures he admired and respected. His passing was untimely and tragic, but his legacy remains enduring. Through his children, Bindi and Robert, who have followed in his conservationist footsteps, and through the continuing work of the Australia Zoo and Wildlife Warriors, Irwin's mission lives on. In the heart of Malawi's central Dawa district, a wave of terror swept through 4 remote villages when a mysterious beast emerged from the shadows, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. What began as whispers of strange animal sightings quickly spiraled into panic, forcing nearly 4,000 villagers to abandon their homes in fear. Entire families fled to seek refuge at a community hall in the district headquarters, clutching whatever possessions they could carry and hoping the nightmare would pass. The predator, suspected to be a rabid hyena, descended on the region like a phantom of the bush. It struck with terrifying brutality, killing 3 people and maiming 16 others. Its attacks were not just deadly, they were grotesque. The victims didn't just suffer fatal wounds. Many were found with crushed skulls, their intestines and private parts torn out. Among the dead were 2 elderly women and a 3-year-old child, their lives stolen in the most horrifying manner imaginable. Survivors were left permanently scarred. Some lost both legs and hands. Others were blinded or left without ears. One woman had her mouth and nose completely ripped away. The beast didn't just kill, it mutilated. Those who survived carried more than physical wounds. They bore the trauma of an encounter that blurred the line between animal attack and supernatural horror. As panic gripped the district, security forces sprang into action. Dozens of armed officers were deployed to the area, patrolling the villages and offering protection to those brave enough to return. The animal itself, however, remained elusive. Rangers and police worked together to track it through the rugged, mountainous terrain, but the predator seemed to vanish into the wilderness after each attack, leaving only blood and fear behind. Wildlife authorities, including Parks and Wildlife Officer Leonard Sifu, began examining the survivors' injuries in an effort to confirm the nature of the beast. While all signs pointed to a rabid hyena, many locals rejected this theory. They argued that the creature did not look like a typical hyena. Its limbs were longer, its movements more cunning, too calculated, too deliberate to be explained by rabies alone. Adding to the mystery was the chilling belief shared by many villagers that this was not a new attacker, but the resurrection of a previous nightmare. Just a year earlier, in a similarly chilling incident, another beast had killed 5 people and injured over 20 before being hunted down and killed by game rangers and paramilitary police. That creature had also been identified as a rabid hyena, though many questioned the diagnosis. Villagers noted inconsistencies in its appearance, unusually long limbs and strange behavior, and some believed that it was no ordinary animal at all. Among the villagers, convinced of the creature's supernatural origins, was Morgan Amoni, a 30-year-old local who claimed to have seen it up close. He insisted the beast bore an uncanny resemblance to the one slain the year before. Now at Lilongwe Central Hospital, tending to his injured father, he believed the animal had returned from the grave, driven by vengeance. His words echoed the fears of many in the region. In a country where legends of shapeshifters and witchcraft still weave through everyday life, the idea that the beast was more than just a rabid animal gained traction quickly. Some believed it to be the product of dark magic, an evil spirit inhabiting the body of a hyena to punish the living. While the experts stuck to biological explanations, even they acknowledged the unusual nature of the attacks. Dr. Matthias Joshua, the Dawa district health officer, confirmed the appalling extent of the injuries, describing cases so severe that even seasoned medical staff were shaken. This wasn't a simple case of an animal on a rampage. It was carnage of an almost surreal kind. Despite the horror, some residents have begun returning home, aided by the presence of armed patrols and the hope that the worst is over. But the fear lingers. The beast has yet to be caught, and its shadow still looms over the hills of Dawa. Until it is captured, or until the attacks stop completely, the villagers sleep with one eye open, haunted by the memory of the faceless predator that tore through their homes and their peace. On a warm summer Sunday in Campbellton, New Brunswick, 2 little boys, Noah, just 4 years old, and his older brother Connor, days away from turning 7, spent the day immersed in joy. They splashed around in a pool, visited animals at a family friend's farm, and even had the thrill of steering a tractor. It was a perfect day for 2 energetic, fun-loving kids. That night, the boys settled down to sleep in the upstairs apartment of Jean-Claude Savoie, the family friend who owned the farm, and also a pet store, Reptile Ocean, located just below the apartment. But as the quiet hours of early Monday morning set in, the unimaginable happened. A massive African rock python, more than 10 feet long and weighing close to 100 pounds, escaped from its enclosure. Somehow, the snake managed to slither through a ceiling vent and into the building's ductwork. The enclosure, built like a glass aquarium, had extended up to the ceiling, but it hadn't been secured enough to contain the powerful reptile. Above the living room where the boys were sleeping, the ceiling suddenly gave way. The snake came crashing down. When Savoy walked into the room the next morning, he expected to see the boys sleeping peacefully. Instead, he was met with a nightmarish scene. The ceiling had collapsed, and the massive snake was coiled in the same room as the lifeless bodies of Noah and Connor. He managed to locate the snake in a hole, pin it down, and return it to its cage, but it was too late. The boys had been killed during the night, likely while they slept. Authorities arrived quickly and cordoned off the pet shop with yellow police tape. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, launched a criminal investigation, although they stressed the unusual nature of the case. This wasn't a typical crime scene. It was one involving a reptile, and one that left experienced officers visibly shaken. The python was euthanized, and post-mortem examinations confirmed that the boys had died of asphyxiation. Their small bodies were also covered in puncture wounds consistent with snake bites. The town of Campbellton, a quiet community, was rocked by the tragedy. Diane Fournier, a neighbor who had known the boys, expressed disbelief. "They were brothers," she said. "They played in my yard with my dogs all the time." Her words echoed the thoughts of many in the neighborhood. No one could imagine that such horror had unfolded in their midst. Jean-Claude Savoy, a longtime friend of the boys' family, was devastated. He told Canadian media he had no idea the snake could make its way through the ventilation system. He had thought the enclosure was secure, believing the python too large to maneuver through the ducts. His own son, who had been sleeping in a separate room, was unharmed. Savoy's connection to reptiles dated back years. A 1996 report by ZooCheck and the World Society for the Protection of Animals described him as a young, enthusiastic collector of exotic animals. Reptile Ocean was his commercial venture, a place where reptiles were showcased and sold. After the tragedy, the pet store's Facebook page briefly posted condolences before being shut down. In the aftermath, questions about exotic animal ownership in residential areas were reignited. While deaths caused by large constrictor snakes like pythons are rare, they're not unheard of. The Humane Society has documented 17 snake-related fatalities in the U.S. since 1978, with many more injuries and close calls reported across North America. Their report warned of a growing problem: pet pythons, boa constrictors, and anacondas escaping into neighborhoods, endangering people and local wildlife. Despite the emotional weight of the incident, a Canadian court later cleared Jean-Claude Savoy of criminal negligence. The judge ruled that Savoy had not foreseen the possibility of the snake escaping through the duct, nor had he acted recklessly. The tragedy was deemed a horrible accident. In the bustling heart of Guangdong Province, China, inside a well-known restaurant famous for its exotic delicacies, Chef Peng Fan was preparing a dish that was both revered and feared: snake soup made from the highly venomous Indochinese spitting cobra. Snake meat, considered a delicacy in many parts of China, is believed to have medicinal properties and is often served in upscale establishments. On this particular evening, Peng was crafting a dish that demanded precision and courage. He had handled venomous reptiles before, and this cobra was no exception. In a practiced motion, he severed the snake's head, placing it aside as he moved on to clean and dice the rest of the body. With the head separated from the body, the danger should have been gone, or so it seemed. Roughly 20 minutes passed as Chef Peng worked in the kitchen, unaware that the real threat was still very much present. When he reached to dispose of the severed cobra's head, it suddenly lunged, driven by lingering reflexes, and sank its fangs into his hand. Though decapitated, the cobra's head was still capable of a deadly final act. Its venom, one of the most potent in the reptile world, entered Peng's bloodstream almost instantly. Within moments, paralysis began to set in. Colleagues heard a commotion and rushed in, only to find the chef already collapsing. Despite frantic efforts to save him and desperate calls for medical help, Peng died before the anti-venom could be administered. The restaurant fell into stunned silence as patrons and staff tried to process the horrifying scene. One diner, Lin Sun, who had been celebrating his wife's birthday, later recounted the chaos that erupted from the kitchen. They heard sudden screams and panicked shouts for a doctor, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. The police, called to investigate, were met with a bizarre but tragic case. Officials confirmed that Peng had died from the cobra's venom, delivered in a bite from a severed head, a rare and shocking occurrence. Though horrifying, experts later explained that such an event was biologically plausible. Snakes, particularly venomous ones like the spitting cobra, can exhibit reflexive behavior long after death. It's not uncommon for a decapitated snake's head to remain capable of biting and injecting venom for up to an hour after being separated from its body. While the body is effectively dead, basic neural activity can continue in the head, one herpetologist noted. This means the fangs can still deploy venom, making them just as dangerous post-mortem. The Indo-Chinese spitting cobra, native to Southeast Asia, is a creature of both fear and fascination. Known for its ability to spit venom at predators from a distance and grow up to 5 feet in length, its potent toxin can cause paralysis, tissue necrosis, and death by asphyxiation, if not treated immediately. In traditional Chinese medicine, however, its flesh is considered valuable, believed to provide health benefits that attract diners seeking something both adventurous and therapeutic. For Chef Peng, cooking such a dish was not an unusual task. He had likely prepared similar meals many times before, but this time, the cobra struck back, literally, from beyond the grave. Following the incident, authorities ruled Peng's death as a tragic accident. It is a highly unusual case, but it appears to be just that, an accident, a police spokesperson stated. He prepared the snake himself and was simply unlucky. In the wake of the tragedy, Peng Fan's restaurant closed temporarily out of respect, and fellow chefs across the region took extra precautions when working with venomous species. It was supposed to be a peaceful hike through one of the Pacific Northwest's most beautiful trails, but what began as a scenic walk along Clahane Ridge in Washington's Olympic National Park ended in an unexpected and tragic encounter with a wild animal, one that had long shown signs of aggressive behavior. On a Saturday in October, 63-year-old Robert Boardman was hiking with his wife and a friend, taking in the crisp air and sweeping views of the mountainous landscape. As they paused for a quiet lunch along the ridge, an all-too-familiar presence emerged from the brush, a mountain goat known to park rangers for its troubling behavior. This wasn't a fleeting moment of curiosity or a typical wildlife sighting. The goat, roughly 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing in at over 250 pounds, was no stranger to humans. In fact, it had developed an alarming habit of approaching visitors, not in fear, but with unsettling boldness. Rangers had previously tried to deter the goat's behavior. According to park spokeswoman Barb Maines, staff had used non-lethal hazing tactics, firing beanbags and tossing rocks to reinforce the message that people were to be avoided. Despite these efforts, there had been no prior attacks or direct injuries to warrant its removal from the park. That changed that day. As the goat approached, Boardman stood up and attempted to scare it off. Witnesses say he positioned himself between the animal and his companions, trying to drive it away. But the goat didn't retreat. In a sudden and violent act, it lunged at Boardman, goring him in the leg. The impact was devastating. Mountain goats, despite their seemingly docile appearance, are equipped with sharp horns and powerful builds capable of inflicting serious harm. Even more chilling, the goat reportedly stood over Boardman after the attack, refusing to leave. It wasn't until a park ranger arrived and hurled rocks at the animal that it finally backed off, giving others the chance to reach the injured hiker. Emergency services were dispatched quickly, and a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter arrived to airlift Boardman to a nearby hospital in Port Angeles. Tragically, the injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The Olympic National Park community was left stunned. Not only was the incident rare, it was believed to be the first fatality caused by a mountain goat in the park's history. Mountain goats, found only in North America, generally avoid human contact. But in this case, something had clearly gone wrong. Officials believe the animal had become habituated to human presence, possibly attracted to the salt found in sweat and urine, which hikers inadvertently leave behind on trails. Over time, the goat had lost its natural wariness, a potentially dangerous development when combined with its territorial instincts. In response to the attack, park rangers made the difficult decision to track down and euthanize the goat. While a tragic outcome, it was deemed necessary to protect other visitors from a similar fate. Approximately 300 mountain goats call Olympic National Park home. While they typically roam the remote alpine areas, encounters with hikers aren't unheard of, especially in more trafficked sections of the park. Wildlife experts stress the importance of maintaining a respectful distance from all animals, no matter how harmless they may appear. Human interaction, even unintentional, can alter wild animals' behavior in ways that create risk for everyone.